tonight. Representing ownership tonight, Mr. Jim Tully, Mr. Matt McGovern, myself, Jesse Schomer. My firm is Rignanti Stereo. We're based out of Wakefield. My practice is almost exclusively Chapter 40B development, so I'm the 40B permitting attorney for this project. With us here tonight is Dan Skolsky of EMS Design. He's in the black on the end there, and will be presenting in a few moments the project architecture.
Jesse, for those of us who aren't aware of 40B, I want to just quickly.
Sure. Do you mind if I just?
Oh, all right. Yeah, you just mentioned 40B attorney. I'm like, some people may not know what that means.
Sure. We've got a whole slide actually,
Okay.
if we want to go into detail.
All right, perfect.
The landscape architects for the project are Hawk Design. Their representatives are not here tonight, but if any questions come up tonight, we'll pass them along, and they could be made present at future meetings. Representing the site civil engineering is David Kelly of Kelly Engineering. He's the second to the end there. He'll be walking through the civil plan in a few minutes. The traffic consultants are not here tonight. That's MDM Transportation Consultants. I've worked with them on a number of occasions for larger 40B projects. They're among the top in the business, and they'll be available for questions at future meetings if any of you have questions about traffic. I know that's an issue we all are concerned about in the eastern Massachusetts area. Our financial and fiscal consultant is Bob Engler of SEBL LLC. Bob is a consultant who primarily works in 40B development and consults for that purpose. And finally, our fiscal impact consultant is Mark Fougere of Fougere Planning and Development. And I believe most of you have a report that Mr. Fougere prepared, which outlines the fiscal impact of the project, which we'll be walking through some bullet points with that as well. To go back to Town Administrator Silva's question regarding 40B, the 40B statute that I referred to previously, that refers to Chapter 40B of the Massachusetts General Laws. That is Massachusetts Affordable Housing Statute, and it was enacted in the late 1960s as a civil rights era law, the purpose of which was to ensure that all communities in the Commonwealth have at least 10% of what's considered to be affordable housing. So for this project, we are proposing to dedicate 25% of the units in this project, which will be 39 units, as affordable, which means that the income of the residents of those apartments, condominiums, will be restricted to 80% of the area median income. And that's something that's determined by the federal government on a rolling basis. By providing 25% of the units as affordable, this project is permitted to proceed under the 40B statute. And the purpose of the 40B statute is essentially to consolidate all local permitting processes into a single process, with a few exceptions that we can talk about in a moment. Please.
Plenty of space when I come in.
Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. The 40B statute essentially consolidates all of the permitting processes into a single hearing that's done by the Zoning Board of Appeals. Now, obviously, the board before you tonight is not the Zoning Board of Appeals. We still have some ways to go before we even get to this point. So just to echo a point you made, Mr. Chair, tonight, I do think it's important to stress and be mindful that we are at a very high level of concept at this point in the process. It's very conceptual, so the things like the colors and the materials, and even some of the more technical aspects of the project, like stormwater management, haven't yet been designed to a full level of detail. But that having been said, we are here to answer any questions that you may have, and we're going to be taking your feedback as we proceed with the project and design the project based on the feedback that we received from the community and the select board. So if I can go to the next project, this slide, this is the project site generally. This is the where it's designated on Google. Okay, so this is not showing up on the screen, unfortunately. This is 41 Lowell Street, fairly close to the center of Dunstable. We're right about here. On to the next slide here. This is a general outline of the project, and I won't read every word on this slide. I'll leave it to Dan to run through some of the details when he shows you what the proposed buildings are conceived as to look like at this point. But just in a general sense, The project site, 41 Lowell Street, this was identified on the town's 2016 housing production plan as a developable site for affordable housing. The housing production plan is a document that the town prepared under the 40B statute. It's an effort to try to identify locations where affordable housing can be developed and strategies for developing it in the community. The proposed project will include 156 total dwelling units, and the breakdown here is provided of the types of units that these are proposed to be. So it's going to be a mix of townhouse style condominium units with duplexes and single family style condominium units. And then there's going to be 3 buildings at the rear of the site, which are going to be garden style multifamily buildings with about 41 to 42 units per building. Now that's going to be nestled towards the rear of the site. So the intent of the design was to create a transition with the smaller duplex and single family style buildings up at the front, transition to the rear where you have the garden style of the larger buildings in the rear. So that sort of the higher density development is really kept farther away from Lowell Street, from residents who are passing by. And so the intent of that is to make it so that the density is not visible, not impacting the community, and primarily that's accomplished through the layout that Dan will go through in a few minutes. The project is proposed to have ample parking, 356 total parking spaces, which is more than 2 spaces per unit. We recognize that out here in Dunstable, most folks have automobiles, and that's their primary mode of transportation. We're not kidding ourselves that everyone's going to be taking the bus everywhere. So we planned for that by providing more than 2 parking spaces per unit. There is a proposed common clubhouse towards the front of the site, and you can actually see it on that board up there. That's the common clubhouse. And we'll be working with the town to coordinate some public access for local seniors to be able to use this facility, which will contain some amenity spaces in the building itself. There will also be walking trails around the site, and as the civil plan will show in a few minutes, there's an ample area of open green space that's available for conservation purposes towards the rear of the site, which contains wetlands and generally areas that we're not proposing to develop in any way. There is also towards the front of the site a property that we believe is appropriate for the dedication of a DPW appropriate property, facility building for DPW. The other details of the project, and this is a pretty crucial detail, is the top bullet point as you see there. This is an age-restricted project. This will be restricted to 55 plus seniors, and I know that 55 plus doesn't sound like seniors. I'm sitting here, I'm in my mid-40s, that's 10 years from where I am. But it is available for residents by 55 plus. What that means is under the federal statute, which governs these kind of projects, is that at least 80% of the units must have at least 1 senior residing in them in order to qualify for what's called a HOPA statute, which is a requirement for this project. In practice, these kinds of projects are almost exclusively occupied by seniors, at least 1 senior. And in general, they generate essentially 0 school-age children. I won't say 0, but the number is essentially nil, and that's statistically analyzed across projects. It is theoretically possible, of course, for a school-age child to reside in this unit. It happens every once in a while. For example, an empty nester, or someone comes to live with their grandparents in a project like this. But on a whole, statistically, the incidence of school-age children in projects like this is essentially never. So this will be an opportunity to bring new revenue, as I'll outline in a few minutes, without having any meaningful impact on the local school system, which obviously is a top consideration for a town like this, and a top line item for the select board as you consider your town finances. Moving on to the next slide. This is an outline of some bullet points relating to the affordability needs in the town of Dunstable. Currently on the subsidized housing inventory, which is a list of affordable housing that's developed in each community, the state does not recognize any affordable housing units in the town of Dunstable as being affordable, within the meaning of Chapter 40B terminology. So this is an opportunity to bring some much needed affordable housing to the town of Dunstable. In March 2016, the Housing Production Plan recommended 75 to 135 new affordable housing units. And this site, as I mentioned previously, was identified as an opportune site for development of affordable housing. As I mentioned on the previous slide, the development of housing in general, and especially under Chapter 40B, does have a tendency to draw school-age children, which makes this project really an excellent opportunity to bring affordable housing for local seniors who desire to stay in the community or from surrounding communities without having a school impact. So under the 40B statute, one of the goals is actually to draw school-age children and families to the community. For that reason, the subsidizing agencies and the state actually require 40B projects, in most cases, to have 3-bedroom units so that families can reside in them. This project, because it's a senior housing development, would be exempt from that requirement. So we would not be intending to draw families with school-age children. Primarily seniors, folks who are looking to stay in the community. Our position with respect to this project is that the town's aging population, this is an excellent opportunity and this is a great project for the town, for an opportunity for seniors to age in place, stay in the community where their children may have grown up, where they'd like to downsize from a larger house and without having to move into another town or city. This particular site, as noted in bullet point 6 there, is a great location. It's previously developed gravel pit. It's got great soils that drain very well, as David will outline in his presentation of the civil site plan. It has a lot of dense vegetation that will screen the project primarily for view from residents around the community and from motorists who are driving on Lowell Street. And it's a significant site, so we're able to put 156 units on this project site without making it seem excessively crowded. There's room to spread out, there's room for circulation, and there's room to put those larger buildings really in the rear of the site where most of you, once they're built, may not even realize that they're there. Moving on to the next slide, these are some bullet points that go through the report that I alluded to a few minutes ago, the Fougere Planning and Development Fiscal Impact Report. And I won't go through all the numbers because there's a lot of data, but what you see on the right side, and this is also in a packet that we handed out, this is the top line projected annual gross revenue. Now that's property tax revenue that would be generated by the condominium units in this project. So what Fougere did is they took a look at the projected gross revenues from the condominium units, and they projected based on the number of units and the type of project that we're proposing, the projected municipal cost for police to respond to emergencies at this project, for the fire department for the same reason, for the council on aging, for these new senior residents to be moving into the town and have needs that the council on aging would be expected to provide, as well as some additional miscellaneous expenses and enterprise fund for water costs. The total fiscal impact that Fougere Planning and Development is projecting for this project is $491,180. Now against that top line, that results in a positive net fiscal impact of over $1 million. This contrasts significantly with some non-age restricted 40B projects, which, as I mentioned a couple times, are projected to have school impacts. So school impacts are obviously one of the primary drivers of municipal budgeting. This project, having a negligible impact on the school system, would not have that additional line item which might factor in somewhere there. So this is a great opportunity for the town to provide affordable housing, provide opportunities for seniors to age in place in the community without a fiscal impact in a way that would drag down the town's revenues. The additional bullet points on the left there have some further data points with the specifics of what Fougere Planning and Development is projecting for the specific municipal impacts here. The way that they calculate that is based on statistical analysis of prior projects. He calls around to other communities and gives a sense of how frequently the police are called out to the site, how frequently an ambulance has to come out to the site, how frequently the fire department, et cetera. And that's amortized here and outlined in this slide here. Moving on to the next slide, ladies and gentlemen. This project also, in addition to the other benefits that I've mentioned previously, it provides a great opportunity to really expand the user base of the town's new water infrastructure that you've all spent quite a bit of money investing in for the benefit of the town. So this project is proposed to be on town water. We add about 150 new users, one for each unit, obviously, plus additional users associated with the project itself, the DPW facility. This would add approximately $400,000 in water usage, which will help defray the heavy infrastructure costs that the town is already incurring. It will significantly lower the average user's water bill. We're projecting by about half by adding this significant new base of users to the town water. Obviously, a lot of folks are still on well water. This project does not propose any well water or any of the units, and we're happy to write into the condominium documents that would not be allowed in the future. So we're proposing for this project to connect to and be reliant on town water for the benefit of the town. This infrastructure that we've all invested in. Additional benefits, I believe I've gone through most of these, the town water customers, the potential DPW facilities, the town coordinated senior access to the clubhouse building, and I just realized we've got a better view of it here on this board here. That's a conceptual rendering of the proposed clubhouse that Dan will outline in just a few seconds here. Also, around the site, we're proposing to have some walking trails. There are some opportunities to connect these to other local roads. David will walk through that with you in a few minutes. The conservation land in the rear of the site that we're not proposing to develop, that can be protected from development in perpetuity. And also the project of this size and this nature will generate a lot of construction-related jobs. So we're anticipating that to be good for the town, good for local and regional residents, especially folks who are in the trades. The 55+ benefits outlined there, minimal school impact, housing option for seniors, and less commuter traffic. And as I mentioned at the outset of my comments, NDN Transportation is not here tonight, but they'll be available for questions in future hearings. What we mean by less commuter traffic is that for senior housing developments, typically the residents, they tend to travel at different times than commuters do because they don't have to necessarily travel to a 9-to-5 job. That's obviously not true of everyone in a project like this, but on the whole, statistically speaking, the residents of these kind of projects do tend to travel at different times of day. So, for example, they might leave at 9 in the morning as opposed to 7 in the morning to go to a job they maybe work at part-time, or maybe work from home some of the time. Obviously, that's something that's started happening quite a bit more in the last few years with COVID and remote work. But on the whole, even before COVID and remote work, projects like this did tend to have less commuter traffic during those peak commuter hours, which are really the most challenging for all of us as we try to get around the state. I believe that's the last of my slides, Mr. Chair. So perhaps I'll pause for if you have any questions of me, and if you don't, I'd like to hand it over to Dan Skolsky for his presentation of the architect.
Yeah, we'll move on to Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I went on 2 minutes longer than I expected, but I appreciate everyone's attention.
Hi, Dan Skolsky from DMS Design. We're the architects for the project. We are headquartered in Peabody, Massachusetts. And thank you all for coming. Great turnout. We know it's the holiday season. Everyone's busy, so trying to be faster than Jesse was, but we'll try to move this along. But again, thank you for taking some time to come here tonight. So as he said, one of the important parts of this, intentionally done, was we worked on the siting of the buildings of this property. We intentionally took the biggest buildings, set them to the back. They are limited to 3 stories. So they're certainly taller than the duplexes and the single family style buildings, but they're relatively low. it's gonna have very minimal visual impact as you drive by. You know, our driveways aren't existing. You'll catch a little glimpse as you drive by, but they're really tucked back pretty far, especially as we have a lot of landscaping planned, a lot of trees coming in, so it's gonna be very well visually screened from the road. So I just want to start there. Again, the driveway is existing. This is the existing barn over here that we're proposing to improve and through some facility, turn that over to town to use it as a DPW facility. We have a series of single-family style homes over here on the pond. That clubhouse that you see right over here, that's planned for here. So you come in, tree line, boulevard. We're going to build up a dirt berm over here to screen ourselves from this DPW barn with some vegetation on top of it in the form of trees. Nice little single families over here. The clubhouse does have, as you can see up here, it's designed after the sort of the concept of a barn, big gable roof, clear story, tower element, cupola element. We've got some stone on the facade over here, and then behind that leads to a pool, an in-ground pool. There's some parking for that, and then we've got ringing the site are the duplex units around a new town green that we're proposing, and then our apartment buildings, and then of the 156 units that we have, and the 356 parking spaces that we have, roughly 1/3 of those parking spaces will be covered. So every single-family home has garage spaces. Every duplex has garage spaces. Half of the first floor of each of the larger apartment-style buildings have garage spaces, and then we have some freestanding garages down here at the bottom of the site. So that's our overall site layout. This again is that shared clubhouse. Our vision is that it's certainly an amenity space for the residents of the property, but we also plan to have coordinate with the town to have access to seniors that are in the town, some form of arrangements that can be used by others in the town as well. This is a view of the neighborhood duplexes. So as we saw down here, this is kind of coming around this corner over here and what that would look like. So they're low in height. We spent a lot of time designing the roofs, keep these buildings low, add visual interest. We have a lot of trim and overhangs and shadow lines and things that, again, this is sort of a high-level conceptual first meeting. Let us get our thoughts out, document the process, get some feedback, and we'll hone this as we go, and we'll get into more. Eventually, this becomes very specific colors, material boards, all this gets locked in as the process moves along. Aerial site view, this is coming in sort of left of the driveway. This is that clubhouse that we talked about, the single-family style condominiums that we're covering, and that existing pond that's back there. Again, we're really, it's a pretty great site, and we think and hope that we're respecting it. It will be well vegetated, it will be well set back, so it's going to have a great impact on people who live there, and I think minimal impact in the negative for all of you that are residents of the town. Some elevations of the clubhouse, again, a lot of care to break down the scale. It's not just a big box, multiple roof lines, cupolas, trim, sort of big style barn doors over here, whole different side. You know, oftentimes in New England, there's a book, I'm not sure if you've read it. It's big house, back house, little house, barn. These properties were developed in a certain way, and so we're sort of emulating that thought process with this, as if this thing was, designed in one part and then got added on to over the years. I got a view towards the back of this clubhouse. And these are the single-family style condominiums. So you can see we've got some, really steep roof lines, more shallow roof lines, a lot of dormering, a lot of cabling, rake overhangs, a lot of attention to sort of breaking down the mass, good shadow lines, stone base that comes up around some of the garage doors. So these are not exactly the cookie cutter single families that we see in a lot of properties like this. Different siding materials. We've got some gunneling stone, we've got some board and batten, we've got some clapboard style siding. Just another view of those. This is a layout. So while this is an age-restricted property, it's also designed to be aging in place. So all of the single-family style units and all of the duplex style units are all going to have a first floor master suite. And when they have a second floor, that's more for a guest room. And certainly on the larger apartment style buildings, they're fully accessible. Each building will have its elevator. Every unit's gonna be flat. There's no stairs to walk. There's no ramp. So it's gonna be a great place for people to live at 55, 60, 65, 75 plus in age as they go. And certainly by requirements, a minimum of 5% of those units will be what we call fully accessible in the code, but the other 95% are what is in the category of adaptable. So they'll have changes that can be made so they'll be, nice to age there, whether that be you have to add a grab bar, your shower, or whatever that'll be in the future. Duplex elevations, similar style architecture to what's going on with single family homes on the property. And again, I won't get into the floor plans tonight too much, but you have copies of all this presentation, by the way, in one of the handouts you have, so you can go over it. And there'll be some subsequent meetings to talk more in more detail about that. This is the apartment building rendering. Again, we took care on this to break this down. So we've got one side at the base of vertical board and back. We've got stone at the base that is put at various heights. We've got a water table horizontal trim, another layer of horizontal trim between the second and third floors. Large double hung windows. They're 6/1. Sometimes they're triples. Sometimes they're single windows. We've got balconies on units so people can have access to fresh air. A main gable roof, bisecting gable roofs. Again, a lot of shadow line, a lot of play to break this down. We have a big timber pergola style feature at the entry. So these will have nice detail as you drive in and as you approach the building. These are the floor plans. Again, we'll get into this in subsequent meetings, but the typical apartment building is a double loaded corridor, which is like this. The corridor is down the middle. You access units both ways. On the first floor of these buildings, we're going with a single loaded corridor. So we have garages on one side, and these are all single family home style garages. Garage door that goes up overhead. You pull your car in, you pull your car out, as opposed to a big parking garage style like you see in a building in Boston. So it breaks the scale down. It's very kind of user friendly from that point of view. And we'll get to civil. David, if you want to go over site plan, and then obviously I'm here so we can get into some questions as we do.
Good evening, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Cundy with Cundy Engineering Group. We're the site civil engineers. As Jesse explained earlier, we are in the early stages of site design. At this stage, what we've done is identify any issues that are on the site and how we might address them. The good news is that what has been described to you so far fits very well on the property. And we don't anticipate, as we go through a final design, any issues that can't be overcome. I'll give you some statistics firstly and give you some background, and I'll go quickly through and explain our thoughts for the engineering and some features on the site that will be incorporated in the final design plan. This is the entire property. This is really the first time you've seen the entire property. It extends from Main Street, Lowell Street and Main Street here. This is the intersection that you've seen a couple of times right here. And the main driveway is here. This is the existing construction yard that's located here, which would hopefully become the DPW building. You've heard that a number of times. The total site's about 77 acres, and it extends from Main Street back and across the existing easement that exists on the site. There's a 250-foot wide, high tension electric easement that travels east to west across the property and brings power around this geographic area. And then there's a sort of an odd piece that extends back into the property. That's actually all a part of the property. It's 77 acres. As you saw in the earlier plans, we're interested in this section up here. Just quickly, and I'll go back to the plan in a moment, just while we have this up so we don't have to go back and forth. Some information on this sheet. The rear portion is about 33 acres. So that would ultimately be permanent open space. There may be some passive uses on it, which we can look at quickly here. but it'll generally be undisturbed and sort of unimpacted open space area that would remain. It's about 33 acres plus or minus. The areas outside of the development itself we're calling passive recreation areas. So there will be walkways, you can see them in pink here. We've actually even extended some down in this direction here and back over in this direction here. But generally those will remain as open space, but they'll be usable open space. The majority of the site, those of you who are familiar with it know that it's already cleared. It was a meadow or at some point previously disturbed areas. There are not a lot of existing vegetation, certainly not within the limit of work that we're proposing. And then a last statistic is that the majority of this site will end up being green area. That's 77 acres. Approximately only 10 acres or 11 acres gets converted to impervious area. So to give you some idea of the amount of open space that will remain on this property. I'm just going to flip back to the site plan quickly and I'll take you through it. I won't spend a lot of time because, as I noted, we're really early in the engineering stages. The property is being fully surveyed, so what you see on the plans you see tonight is actually properly delineated boundaries of the property. Also, we have a full topographic survey so we can see what's going on the ground. And it's a pretty flat site, so it's pretty easy to develop. Just for reference, this point and the pond are about 14 feet in difference in elevation. So it's quite flat and then it slopes down towards the pond in this direction here, this old farm pond, which is shown in this section of the property. I think that you've been given an overview of the property, but essentially you would access from Lowell Street past what will be the new DPW building on the right. It will be nicely landscaped from the remainder of the development. And then, as pointed out a number of times, you have the lower and sort of less dense properties that are located up front and more visible and just really look like houses in the distance. And then these larger buildings that are located in a way that really looks back into the development, so that essentially the limit of work is, the limit of the development is that big high tension electric heating that we talked about, and you may have seen it certainly runs through the town. The existing building is about 9,000 square feet, and there are on the property wetlands area. Those areas have been delineated in the past. In fact, have been delineated and approved by the Conservation Commission. Just because of the amount of time that's happened since then, those delineations have lapsed, but we'll be redelineating those wetlands. We don't expect them to change because they're really based on topography against the pond and the like. The project won't interfere with any of those wetlands. In fact, it will protect them. We will be within jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. We'll be within the 100-foot buffer zone in some locations. But in general, there'll be no impact to the wetlands and no disturbance of the wetlands. Again, just for some additional reference, there is a floodplain on the property, but it's located within the pond itself, the pond that's on the east side of the site. And there was a question, I think, last time as to whether or not there's endangered species habitat on the property. There is not. There is a mapped endangered species habitat all the way at the bottom of that first slide I showed you, which would be down here somewhere. I'm not sure what the species is, but this property will not impact that in any way. As noted, there's 156 units. That translates to about 330 bedrooms plus or minus. So we have to design an on-site sewage disposal system to accommodate the sewage flows from the property. It will be designed for about 36,000 gallons per day. It'll be permitted through the DEP under their groundwater discharge permit. The good news is that the soils are good here. They're sandy soils. Groundwater is pretty deep, so we don't expect there to be any problem relative to the design or permitting of that system. As noted by Jesse, the project will include full stormwater management design compliant with the DEP requirements. We haven't designed it yet, but there are areas on the site that can accommodate what we're proposing, so that there'll be no increase in runoff from the site. Water quality will be matched, the groundwater recharge will be matched. So the takeaway from this is that the site can handle what's being proposed. It may seem like a pretty big development, but and not be flippant, but it isn't in our world, and the site can accommodate what's being proposed quite easily. That's an overview, Nancy. I'm sure we're going here.
Thanks. I think our ownership would like to say a few words if that is for
Absolutely.
Mr. Governor. Thank you. Like to say anything?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Matt McGovern. Born and raised in Dunstable. I grew up in the dairy family farm. As you probably all know, it's McGovern Farm. My parents are here this evening. My family came to Dunstable in 1947 when my grandfather moved here to start the farm on Main Street. So a lot of history in Dunstable. I personally love the town. I'm very invested. And this project is a very unique opportunity for Dunstable, and my heart and soul is in it because I think it's a great project for this town. This isn't just a, affordable housing project that we're going to crash in here and expose the town in terms of financially or a big, robust inflow of people. This is a well thought out project that is going to help the town financially. It's going to help the town's water system. It's going to help the town's DPW program. It's got a million different benefits here, and I'm very proud of this project. Jim Tully and I purchased the property from the Dumont family a couple years ago. When we first bought it, it was probably just going to be another development. We could put in, 12 or 14 homes in here and have a traditional development with a road and some huge old houses, which we wouldn't even be having a meeting tonight because of that. But that wouldn't solve the town's problems and the fiscal problems that the town's having right now. So as you all know, the town of Dunstable doesn't have a big commercial base to tax. It's pretty much a residential town, and unfortunately with the residential program, the costs almost equal the revenue that you get from taxing certain homes. So without that commercial base, this board here has to deal with the fiscal constraints on an annual basis that gets worse and worse every year as education costs increase and all other costs increase. It's a very difficult situation. This project is a huge windfall. It's essentially equivalent to a commercial project. We'll be investing almost $70 million in this project that is fully taxable. And that's how you get to that $1.1 million annual increase in tax revenue. That's a huge, huge windfall to this community. Back to the project itself. Again, this is a huge inroad into your affordable housing concerns. What Dunstable is exposed for, which you may not know, is another developer come in here and put in another large 40B project, and they don't have to really accommodate all these other things that we're doing. They can slam it in here, you'd have a ton of children that you have to provide schooling for, and it would be zero tax revenue for the town of Dunstable. That's what you don't want to have here. So this is a project that gets you off the hook from an affordability standpoint. So you made a huge inroads. You contributing 40 units to the affordable housing area, and it gets you off the hook for that. Also, this location is great for this. It's on the end of town, and growing up on the family farm, pulling out of Main Street, my dad always has complained about it, that you just can't even get out on Main Street, right? Because the traffic's so bad. There's all this traffic coming through town on Main Street, coming from Pepperell or wherever to get to Route 3. This project is on the other side of town, as we all know. So you jump on Wall Street, you're on Route 3 in 2 seconds. You don't have to go through the town. That's an amazing opportunity for this project. The soils are great, it's hidden, it's absolutely the perfect site for this project. So in closing, you know, I'm very proud of this project, as I've told you. This is gonna be a Class A, you know, first-class development. It's managed by HOA, be all landscapes, lawns mowed, buildings maintained centrally, so you're not gonna get, you know, some neighborhoods of town unfortunately have a pink house and then a blue house, and this guy's mowing his lawn, the guy's not, this guy's got 300 unregistered cars on his lawn. That's not gonna happen here. This is a first-class development, managed centrally. It will be something we can all be proud of. So hopefully you'll support our project, and we're available for any questions.
Okay. Jesse, any other information on your part?
That's it from us. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much, everyone.
So at this point, we will open this up to the audience for questions and answers. And the design team is here to answer those questions specifically based on the discipline that they're involved in. And so, go ahead.
Yeah, my question is about the DPW. That's residentially zoned, so I'm not sure how that's going to fly. I live nearby and I've been waiting for the Dumont noise to get out of there. And I really don't want DPW to be there because that's not residential.
Do you have a, Jesse?
I didn't hear the question.
I said, I'm concerned about the DPW and that property is residentially zoned. I live nearby and I don't want to hear trucks going back and forth again it's so noisy over there even now. And how many years is this project going to take? From beginning to end? I mean, approximately.
An estimate about that, or how long the construction?
Yeah, for construction of this size, it's usually probably the 18 to 20 months zone, or something like that.
So at least 2 years.
It'll be phased, depending on demand.
Yeah, no, but people who live nearby, phasing is fine, but it's still gonna be an ongoing noise. That's all. I was just curious, but the DPW can't go there. That's not a residential property.
Wasn't Sam denied to somebody of the DPW to run business out of there previously on the fact of noise and traffic? Was there a sale denied to a business person on that?
It was denied because it wasn't residential.
All right, so,
I believe that may have been for an individual who was looking to do a
Trucking
business there, a trucking company, but that, please correct me if I'm wrong, this is not my area of expertise, but if it is a town-owned property, it doesn't have to conform to being residential or
That's
non-residential.
really a disappointment. I mean, Dumont was run there for so many years and it's just incredibly noisy. And there's stuff going on down there now that shouldn't be, and it's very noisy.
A lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's really bad.
Well, it's currently privately owned land, so.
I mean, there are-
Yeah, but it's still considered residential, right? So,
okay.
We certainly take the feedback. The facility, the intent of it is to benefit the entire town. Those kind of things, they have to be in kind of a central location optimally so that they can respond to needs around.
you just said we were on the outskirts of town, so.
Getting close, towards the plan left there. What I will say is, we accept your feedback on that and we look forward to designing it so minimizes impacts to neighbors. Work with you.
Hold on a second. No, hold on a second. Just one question at a time. Do you have any other questions, ma'am?
I really just wanted to know the timing and, I'm not opposed to it being residential. I think that's as good as it can get. I just don't like the DPW being there.
Okay,
Thank you.
it's not a problem. Carol Bacon?
I'm asking these questions for affordable housing. Tell me again how many units are going to be universal design or fully accessible?
5%.
5%. Are any of them going to be designated veterans preference?
That's not this time.
I'm sorry, what preference?
Veterans.
Veterans
Oh, okay.
preference. Okay, are the buildings gonna have fire suppression?
Yeah, the large, buildings, 100% will be, fully sprinkled. Yeah.
Okay, good. But only one elevator and 2 staircases for all those units?
There will be 1 elevator and 2 staircases per, building. They're actually, look, everything's relative, so people have different opinions, but there are 41 units of each for 2 of the buildings and 42 for the other, so in the realm, we specialize in multi-families, in the realm of what we do, they're actually not that big, so one elevator.
The only reason I'm asking that question is, I happen to be a senior who has difficulty walking at times, and going downstairs is a real issue. So if you get an evacuation order, you can't use the elevator, you gotta go down the stairs. And you're talking about 3 floors worth of people going downstairs. It seems like 2 staircases aren't enough. Just pass that along.
Yeah,
You're the
sure.
designer.
Sure.
How long are those buildings?
180 feet, plus or minus.
180? Whoa, that doesn't jive with your scale on your plans.
Then you run.
Okay, and is there management on site?
That's the intent.
There will be
That'll be
management
in
on site?
the clubhouse. Do you guys want to come up here so this? Sure.
And these are questions that have to be asked.
Sure.
I'm interested.
And each building's elevator will be a 35-pound cab elevator, which is the size you come in a stretcher, so for medical.
And that's fine, except that if it's a fire, you can't use it. So what good is it gonna be?
Well, no, that's fine.
Yeah, if you get an evacuation order, you don't use the elevator.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go over to the community space there, the shared community room. Your open space, meeting space is approximately 900 square feet. At 6 square feet per person for seating, you don't even have enough room to put the occupants of the place, never mind the public.
Well, it's certainly not designed to hold 1,000 people, that is correct. It has meeting space for, 50, 60 people.
That's, you maximum in that space with the poles down the middle and a 10, and an aisle every 10.
No, that space we call free, and that's, in the space you referenced is also, one portion of that floor plan. There's a number of different uses that we're putting inside that building, so there's the fitness area that will be multifunction, we'll have some free weights, we'll have some machines, we have some laid out space for yoga or stretching type activities. We have an area that will have a kitchen and a dining area, so it could be used as sort of a private zone if you live on the property. Any other birthday party or gathering, or having family over, that sort of thing. We've got breakout spaces, there'll be some co-work spaces, there's a sort of a larger meeting room, so it's designed to, the front portion that you're talking about, kind of flow to that middle portion for some overflow, so I think it's well designed, and it's not, intended to replace this room, but it's certainly for the residents, but it is another community space for the town.
But think about having a homeowners association meeting, one person from each unit, they don't have room to put them in there.
I mean, I hear you, but it's proportionally designed for the size of the units on the property.
Okay. And the public pool, who is taking care of the lifeguard?
Well, it likely won't have a lifeguard, it'll be self.
It's a public pool.
It's a private property, it's a private pool. It has to go through.
And it isn't a community space, it's a private. You have to make up your mind, it's one or the other, so get that in your concepts and decide.
Fair enough, it's not a public pool.
The idea is that it's a private property, it's a private amenity space. We will be working with the town to make it available to local seniors who don't reside in this property. So it's not going to be open to the public, anyone can walk in and go to the pool. But it will be available in some extent, and that's to be determined with the town. We're still very early.
Well, that's another point to keep in mind.
Definitely.
Okay. And you say there's a kitchen facility in that building? I just didn't see it on either one of the designs that were in the packet. And then open signs the second time, they were different.
We don't have a floor plan for this building, so you haven't seen it. We'll have it subsequent meetings.
All right. Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, as an abutter to that property, when you do construction, if that comes to fruition, what are the boundaries gonna be like? Are you gonna be putting up fences between the properties so that the noise and the crap that from over there is not coming from peek into our property? We're worried about the noise, we're worried about the dirt, we're worried about people in and out. We have a private property, private facility, we don't want, the stuff coming in and out. What's the plan there?
Well, we don't have the plan work done yet. It's typical that there is some form of fencing. It typically has a strip on it that would help with, dust that would blow. Depending on where we are in the process, in terms of the season, in terms of work that's on site, there's oftentimes some sort of a watering program to keep dust down, to respect, neighbors. And certainly, we're always on all properties, it's a requiring work of the town on hours and days of the allowed construction and this sort of thing. So it's a managed process.
But at the end, is there going to be a fence cutting that property down from where it is?
I would say to you, I'd encourage a conversation with the direct buyers. A property of this size, it would be atypical to fence the entire perimeter for the entire construction. It's just an expense, it's just not needed. But for specific residents, to try to control them, that's a reasonable request, for sure.
He's asking about after it's done.
Oh,
After it's done, will it be fenced off from the abutters?
I don't think that detail's been.
yeah, we're not there yet, but I gotta get.
Is that as an abutter, is that something you're in favor?
Yes, and how far, how far are the houses, that live away from the property line?
Specifically, the horse run right in there.
Yeah.
This is our property right here. Right here, all the way down, right here.
Yep.
This is our property. And right here, I ride every day. And so if you're doing construction here, I cannot ride. I turn horses out here and here. If you're doing construction, I can't turn horses out there. So I need to know what's going on. And then when I asked Jim, he says, just ask me anything. I said, well, what's gonna happen? And he goes, oh, well, we'll do whatever you want. I mean, they have the bikes out there. Bikes, no, we can't even take the horses in because the horses are trying to.
So we actually need to know what's gonna happen. We need to plan for our future too, because this is screwing us pretty good. So we need to know, is there gonna be a fence there? Will it be a solid fence so that people will not be coming over, I have liability issues to livestock. So that's kind of stuff happening, that it's gonna cost us a fortune. So we want to know.
But I think that's what I don't think. That's feedback that we'll take in, we'll address that and we'll talk to you about that at future meetings. That's fair enough.
How far away is that house from my property?
We vary from 20 feet to 50 feet, depending on which house and which angle it's at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that what the town says, you can build 20 feet from the property line? You can?
15.
Huh?
I think it's 15.
15 feet?
30-foot setback, I believe.
It's 30 feet?
Okay. Are you guys all set?
Oh, sorry.
No, hang on, Walter?
So the property, will there be a hazardous material inspection certificate?
Everything will be tested.
Will there be a certificate?
Sure. Yeah, they have to test to make sure it's clean and it's not going to abate.
It's been done. Yeah, there's been a scientific analysis.
Was it before or after the fire?
Before.
Okay. Sir?
I read some of the questions that were on the website, and I have to say that I think the estimates that were provided in there are way too rosy. I mean, somebody brought up a question about the increase in town population to be up to 24%, and the feedback was, no, don't worry about it, because a lot of these units are gonna be by, single people, divorced people or whatever. I saw the presentation you put up. I see all these garages, 300 parking spots. You're not planning for it to be a single person in one of those units. planning on having much more, which is a bigger impact to the town. And I think some of the estimates that you were putting in there about the impact of the police department, the DPW and fire department. I think as soon as you put this stuff in, the fire department, the police department are going to say, we need a new public safety building. It's going to be $64 million. So that estimate where it showed we were going to have a net benefit, I don't think you're counting everything that's going to be, you're not having the whole thing.
Well, as this project proceeds, we will be in direct contact with the town, with the fire, and DPW police. And that's part of the conversation that Mr. Fugere has. He actually goes and speaks with these officials to get an assessment of what their concerns are about the project, because what their needs are, and how this project is fitting in. You may be right. At this point, there's no way to know. In terms of the number of residents who live there, plan for the most, right?
Right, that's the problem. Plan, the questions that I've sought the answers to, was planning on the least, and not counting on just a basic addition. I mean, instead of one person on average, you should have 2 people on average per unit. That's probably reasonable. As far as the no impact of the school, well, I know some of the seniors that would love to jump into a project like this. They're gonna sell that 4-bedroom house that they had, and they're not gonna sell it to a single divorcee who doesn't wanna come out between 7 and 9 in the morning. There's gonna be an impact to schools, there's gonna be an impact to roads. They're not, I mean, it's too rosy a picture, not coming together.
I'm saying it, if I sold my house and lived in there, I'd have 5 bedroom.
And just one last thing about the site plan, the wastewater management. I've had the benefit of living in town for 26 years. I've lived on Westwood Street and I live on Forest Street now.
Hey, those in the back, you gotta be quiet.
Yeah, we can't hear up here. Hold the side conversations, please.
When there's heavy rain, the bottom of Forest Street floods out. That culvert floods out all the time. Same thing on Westwood Street. Now, there's a big field there that has that waterway going through it. It's soaking up an awful lot of that water. And now it's gonna be hardtop and roof lines that are poured into that stream. It's gonna come across both those streets. There's gonna be an issue.
Dave, you want to talk about sort of the concept of stormwater?
Yeah,
Management design, how you
Thank
do
you.
that?
Again, sure. Again, David Kelly engineer. So we're bound by a series of rules that address exactly what you're asking. The DEP puts a set of regulations. So the regulations say that we have to design our stormwater systems so that there's no increase in storms for all, or no increase in runoff for all storms between a 2-year and a 100-year storm. And the 100-year storm, just for your information, is a storm with an intensity of 8.3 inches, a 24-hour storm. Our storm with 8.3 inches. So that'll give you some idea of sort of the capacity of these things. So how do we do that? It's either going to be in surface ponds or subsurface ponds, depending on how the site lays out. Most likely to be a combination of both. So when we're finished, no more water will leave the site, and most likely less, because we generally tend to over-design these somewhat. And also, we're required to send the same amount of water back into the ground that currently enters the ground today, based on the DEP guidelines. And finally, we're required to remove all sediments from that runoff. So there won't be an impact. I can tell you that straight off, because this is bread and butter, and we have all the tools to do it. There'll be no off-site impact of stormwater. We're not allowed to have any off-site impact of stormwater. Hopefully that answers your question.
None greater than exists today.
That's correct.
But what exists today is already flooding the rivers.
So I mean, our responsibility is not necessarily to address that. And we can certainly talk about it. Maybe there are things we can do that can help that. We need to understand that problem a little better.
Okay, yeah, Alan Cheney.
Yeah, I speak as a butter and not as a member of any board. I hear the word statistics being used a lot. And I'm reminded of Mark Twain's comment, there are lies, damn lies, and statistics. And I do not intend to indicate that anybody is lying here. It's just that statistics sometimes can be misleading simply because some variable isn't included. For example, the presentation that I read indicates probably a maximum of 5 students for the school system. Well, I'd be happy to bet Jimmy $100 that there'll be more than 5 kids there. What's the variable? The variable is Swallow Union School, first of all. Number 5 in the state, according to some degree. And then the variable is the Groton Dunstable system, which was number 16 next week, something like that. At any rate, there's a lot of people don't get down to the school, so good. And they're coming from Westford because Westford has a school system, not as good, but the taxes are less here, believe it or not. So we want to be careful with the statistics, but I'm sorry that the traffic people aren't here because I think that needs a little careful study. There was a statement that at the peak time of traffic, they would estimate 1 car per minute coming and going and so forth. But they don't mention people coming and going to the Halfway Senior Center or Amazon and UPS, FedEx, and they don't mention tradespeople. I mean, after the thing is all built and so forth. In short, I think that what we're looking at is a pretty busy place, our very own urban center in Dunstable. And this may have impacts. For example, there has been sometimes the idea presented of taking that very challenging intersection of Lowell Street and Main Street, and having grown up there, I know a bit about it. Taking Lowell Street and swinging it behind the vet clinic and having a stop there and so forth, which may make sense, but won't come cheap. If Mike Martin's still around, maybe he'll get the state to pay for it. Damn good at it. But on the other hand, somebody else mentioned, well, impact down the road from something, you know. Size matters. Size matters. The more you have of something like the traffic, the more the impacts may be out there. Just some thoughts to take into account as we go along here. I have one specific question. It seems like somebody ought to be able to tell me how long these apartment buildings should be. I heard 180 feet. Somebody else had told me 300 feet. I don't know. How long are they? Doesn't that say on the plan?
Look, I don't have our dimension on it, I don't have it memorized, this is scale, I can email the town tomorrow, I can't remember how long.
Fine. I can go back and look at the plan probably.
I measured it to scale. I have some architectural background and I measured it today and it was close to 370 feet long.
Well, you scale shrink.
So I don't know what it is, but I think you guys, when you do provide the next set of plans, should have for the layperson the specific measurements. On a project of this scale, I think it's important to have the measurements of the delineated, particularly for a building of that size.
Right. Look, I know I forgot.
Yep.
How many of you would like to have this project over the next 6, 7 years, phased project? Built behind your house. Okay. 2, 3,
He's just
4, 5, 6,
asking a question.
7, 8, 9, 10. 11. Now, there must be a few negatives involved here then, because 11 is Now, that doesn't mean there aren't a lot of positives. They've done a pretty good job. Water, yes. But, if we look at this in terms of some of the questions that have come up, and I know the developer is very open to that. Of course, like Mr. Riley has said, everything permanent is change. And we can't stop the change entirely. We damn well better, be careful.
All right, hang on a second, Mike Martin.
I just got a quick question, just opposite of Alan. How many people have room enough behind their house to put that project in? Right.
Hey, to put it in, like that.
Only two do, five don't.
All right, moving on. I think that's Jeff in the back there.
There's Jeff in the back. I'm not in a butter, I live in town, I'm an engineer, so thank you for working late and doing your stuff. I wanna just, one of my points was, I don't know the person who made the point earlier, the negligible impact on the cost of schools and things mentioned in the presentation. I think it's somewhat misleading. I think there's the bullet point immediately below it states, many people in town would be interested in moving to such a community, which would then make their house free. To Alan's point, school's very desirable. That's why I have a daughter, I live in town. So I just think, I know we don't know exactly how many people would move there, but there should be some allowance, maybe 10 households or some for it to, just to understand that total gain, the net revenue for town a little bit better. Just something quantitative to that, I don't know what the right number is, but there should be something there. Is that
Just hang on.
I have more points.
Yeah, hang on a second.
Along those same lines though,
No, wait, hang on a second. Jeff, are you finished?
I have more questions, but we can talk about this.
Okay, ma'am, go ahead.
just because, you had said that that statistically it's unlikely to have children in 55 plus units. So I was wondering if there was data source to that same point.
To the point of the houses that
Well,
wasn't
there's the houses that are being vacated, which is one side of that, and then there's potential children in the 55 plus development, which you had said statistically is unlikely. So I wondered, because you said statistically it's unlikely, is there a data source that backs that up?
There is. So I'll get in trouble with Mr. Cheney for using the term statistical, I'm sure. But what I mean by that is, we all have anecdotally heard of, so-and-so got married to a 25-year-old, now they have a kid, they live in a 55 plus. That's one case. What Mr. Fougere does is he goes to thousands of units and he analyzes them and assesses how many children do they have. And it'll be maybe one across thousands of units. So it's very, very, very rare. That having been said, I know that I'm conveying secondhand information to you on that point. So I think we're going to put it in our to-do list to have Mr. Fougere here and available to answer your questions in greater detail, because that's really his specialty. It's not mine. I don't claim to be an expert on that. So to your point, sir, and to Mr. Cheney's as well, the situation of houses being vacated and families moving in there, that's a phenomenon that's been occasionally referred to as the echo effect. There has been some, again, statistical analysis, and it's inconclusive whether that's a real phenomenon. But that's something we can have Mr. Fougere address at a future meeting. Thank you. Yes, I think there's address or some sort of allowance, just something, because I think the number needs to be refined. I understand your schematic level, so I know these aren't final. And Alan, my favorite statistic point is, the favorite statistic is 95% of statistics are made up. So that's what I love more.
That's my too.
So I live on the other side of town, but I also live very, very close to these high tension power lines. These power lines are actually providing hydro power from Quebec. They're very high voltage, and they've been undergoing a series of renovations over the last, year and a half, 2 years, where they're removing all of the wooden poles on these power lines because they're hookbackers and replacing them with metal poles. Why am I telling you this? Well, if you're going to open this whole site up to development, the way they're doing this power line replacement
and this is probably more for the civil engineer, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name. They're skipping every other pole or every third pole to move further along in the process to get more land coverage. So as part of the construction plan, it's probably a good idea to have them replace all of the wooden poles adjacent to the property while construction is occurring. So then they don't have to come in and say 6 months after they're finished or some amount of time, just so there's it's a lot of noise and it's somewhat intrusive to all of the abutters. I don't know if anyone here lives near them or knows the noises I know, but it's fun. So, no follow-up, just to point out. My last point are about the community center. I work in an engineering firm, I work with architects, we've done a number of senior centers. I do think this community center seems somewhat small. In two specific points. One, I think the placement of the outdoor pool might not necessarily make sense. From every senior center I've worked at, we've done a dozen in Massachusetts at this point. The use of an outdoor structure, like a pool, is not really something that's been requested. That might be used 3 months out of your top. My mom is small and skinny and she won't even go in a heated pool, so my point is that I think something might better serve the residents is potentially a more meeting space for yoga, space for exercise activities, instead of an in-ground pool that only have function outside for 3 months out of the year. That's just I'm not a senior, but it's just my perspective, especially if it's going to be used by people from the town. And the other point on the community center I wanted to make is, in the projects I worked on, the kitchen, from the plans I saw, looks like it's spaced under the stairs, it looks fairly small. Sometimes with these projects we've seen is you want to have some level of commercial equipment, so Meals on Wheels can deliver meals and activities for seniors. I don't know if that's been considered as part of the process. Yeah, a couple points there. That plan's outdated, there's no more stairs, and we're actually enlarging the clear to be a little more functional and considering things like that. There will be a lot of what's happening there is actually, it's more of a warming kitchen, more of a reheating, whether it be for a family having an event or for a Meals on Wheels, so that's in consideration. And, as the pool, this is certainly a multi-purpose facility. So it's handling the residents through some town usage as well. And we do have a multi-function fitness center within the building with, again, free weights, some exercise machines, lay down space for yoga, for stretching kind of thing. So it's not like the pool is the only activity. We're also playing some site things, box support and some other things. It's not just limited to the pool and what's in this building. So it's good feedback, and we'll take it as we continue to hold it at a time.
Last thing, I support the project, and I appreciate you guys taking the time.
Thank you.
Ma'am, right here.
Yes, sir. I have a couple of questions. On the apartments, are those regular apartments or condos that you can buy?
Everything's gonna be a condominium that you can buy.
Okay. My second question is, does go mandated for affordable housing according to the state? We're supposed to have some affordable housing, right?
Yes.
Do people realize, I think, I could be wrong, that if we don't pass this 55 and over plan, another plan can come in and bring in more people and students into the school system? Am I correct?
That's 100% right.
My comments directly toward that. So I wanted to point out, because many of you may not be aware of the school systems, if you have kids in the school systems or not. But Smaller Union is about to lose a huge chunk of their student population, because Groton has built Florence, almost completed the building Florence Roach. And I think Lacey's here from the school committee, she might have the exact number, but I think it involves a third of the student population at Smaller Union will leave and go to Florence Roach. And this is happening within the next year. So I understand why town has traditionally been anti-children, because we pay so much. We pay so much per child to go to school, much more than what people are paying in taxes. I understand that concept. And if you don't have someone in the school system, it's hard, it's a tough, thing to pay. But I also think that a lot of people value Smaller Union. If we don't get more students, where does that leave Smaller Union?
But I think the problem is with this project, if this 55 does not pass, that project is going to change completely and double in size for population, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know how the project will affect, I just wanted to point out that the small union is about to lose a lot of students.
I realize that, but a lot of the conversation tonight was the increase in traffic. Being elderly myself, I don't drive as much as I used to. And as you get older, you usually don't drive at night. If you go out, you make all your little trips at once. I've been in my house now for 3 days, not twice because of the weather, but I chose not to go out today. So you're gonna have the elderly people are not gonna be driving as much as a, younger person who has to go to a job every day. So that's my opinion.
On that small union, where they lose these students, what's the opportunity of taking that school, that footprint, turn it into senior housing?
Yeah, but that's, hang on a second, that may be true, but it's fine for discussion
Just
tonight.
one more question is, what is a senior? What's that age bracket?
55.
For this, 55.
For this project.
I have one question. You said 80% was gonna be 55 and over?
At least 80% has to be. That's
So
the
that means 20% can be anybody?
20% could be, but for this project, we're proposing full senior.
Are they only 1 and 2 bedroom units? There's no 3 bedroom.
There are 3 bedrooms.
There are three.
Oh, wait, did I have a couple?
There are 6 3.
No, I just go.
You have for two apartments, right?
Anybody else with any other questions?
Right.
Over here.
Hard right.
Is there any concern with doubling the water usage with, I think when we did the project, 105 hookups, and now doubling it with another 156 with the volume of water, potentially at the end of the project?
Plenty of water,
Plenty of water, okay.
absolutely.
There's plenty of water. In fact, that, if you follow discussions, this board, where the intention here is we're gonna make a connection into Pepperell to supply them with water. So that aquifer up on 711 Main is got plenty of water in it. And that tank, which I was very involved in when it was built, has polished water in it. So it's got sufficient capacity to handle more than we have in.
How many of these potential units are for existing Dunstable residents? Is that just wide open? If it's for sale, it can be sold to anyone?
It can be sold to anyone.
Okay.
I can maybe add some color on that. So for a 40B project, typically the developer will negotiate with the town and with the state to allow for local preference for a certain percentage of the units. And we're certainly willing to work with the town on that.
Anything else?
No.
In the back, yes, sir.
Rob Bradford, part of the advisory board. Just a general question. Can you walk us through the timeline and milestones, just kind of from a town perspective, up to construction and sort of the phasing that you would see? Just to clarify, sorry, are you talking about? Just general timeline of the project. So forms such as this is one step. What are some of the next steps that you see getting up to construction? And then finally, the phasing of the actual construction. Sure. So we actually have we didn't put it up, but we have a slide with some bullet points at the very end. So this is kind of an outline of the process here. The program that we're proposing here is called the LID program, Local Initiative Program. It's sometimes called the Friendly 40B way. And the reason why we're here tonight is to run the 40B process, because we're trying to get support by the select board and by the community for this project. Really joint application for this. So the town has outlined the process that we're participating in, starting tonight, which outlines a 60-day process for local review, board selectmen, the planning board, the affordable housing committee, and then once again we come back to the board of select. And if following those hearings, the town feels that this is a project that they can support, the developer enters into a memorandum of understanding that provides for process procedure for what's called a site eligibility letter. That's filed with the state. The state does an assessment of the project based on its review of whether this project meets the eligibility requirements of the 40B statute. And if those are met, then the project goes to the zoning board of appeals for a comprehensive permit. That process is a 6-month review process, and there's also outside state and federal permits that would need to be applied for. So where we're sitting here today, this is day one, we're probably at least, I would say, bare minimum 2 years from being at the point where we would have comprehensive permit, all local, state, and federal permits needed to put shovels in the ground. From that point, I think I'd have to defer to Dan about the construction process. I think
That's a single phase, I don't have specifics on how we actually phase it, how to affect time.
that would depend on the market.
I have a question. Think that's the foundation, so they need slabs?
Well, either way, it's foundation, and either way, we have a cross wall, so we want to.
Will it have basement?
And everything that's proposed right now is subgrade, without basement.
No, hang on, Alan Cheney.
Yeah, just very quickly, for general information, back to the water, we have, one of the best water supplies municipally of any town in the state. And, on your way home, thank a fellow by the name of Merle Page, who found that, and thought the town would buy it. And the town now owns about over 500 acres around it, along the land trust. So it's pretty well protected.
Yeah.
Very lucky, and no question what, this project would benefit the water system, simply because it would double the users and seriously cut the water fees that people pay who are actually on the system. Absolutely, but we're very lucky.
Next, hang on a second. Do you have any, right, sir, right there?
Dave Seven, so through this whole process, you said if the town deems it's benefits to do this, how do you determine that? Is there a town vote, like what's the actual mechanism that determines the town as a whole sees this as a benefit?
It would be, it's a vote by these fine folks at the table here.
No, right in the back, way in the back, up against the back wall. If you could stand up.
Sure.
Thank you.
How many people, I've seen kind of different numbers, 300, 700. How many are expected to be?
How many residents?
How many residents?
It's tough to say. There's a mix of 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom units. Some of them will be one occupant, some 2. We're projecting probably somewhere in the range of 1 to 2 residents per unit. So you're looking at, at the high end, 300 people, low end, 156 people.
So 300 at 89% of the town population, right? But like some of these numbers, like the calls to the police, it feels like an increase of less than 1%, right? So I guess my question is, like, if that's off by a factor of 10, are there other numbers that are off by a factor of 10? In that spreadsheet that gives us that 1.1 million. I don't know what kind of impact that is. I also question the kind of the same thing. Obviously, the school system is amazing here, so I feel like that, the senior committee, it's going to be the grandkids, it's going to be somebody else, a bunch of kids. I don't know what the number is, but there should, I think you said, there should be some line item on there for children. I don't think it's a long number. It doesn't make sense.
Understood. I take
But
the
yeah,
point.
if we can get the math behind some of those numbers, it'd be great.
Sure, I'll have to, again, put that to my colleague, Mr. Duver. They'll be able to walk you through the analysis, but it's essentially, again, Alan, it's a matter of statistics. What he does is he goes to these projects and he considers thousands of units, and how many times was, the town of Haverhill the Haverhill Police Department called to this project building, or the town of Linfield called to this building, and he goes all over the state, and he considers these specific types of projects, and he considers that in the aggregate, and averages.
Is that specific to 55 plus? Because, no offense to anybody, but that's where the police, the fire, and ambulance go to.
Yeah.
More than.
It is actually, yeah, he looks specifically at these kinds of projects because, you know, and not to be morbid, but the emergency services needs for these kind of projects is slightly different from a non-age restricted project, there'll be fewer police, more ambulance.
Right.
But he can go straight down into detail.
No, in the back, we're gonna continue right there.
Yeah, I just was wondering, when did this get passed through the town on vote? This whole project, we haven't voted on, correct?
It hasn't been voted on.
So is it going to be voted on?
At some point in the future, there'll be a vote by this board, yeah.
Well, will it be a town vote whether or not this project goes forward or not?
No, I mean, a referendum question? No.
Yeah, and then as far as the DPW, so the town said no to that years ago. Why all of a sudden now we want a burnt down building? You know, doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, some of those questions are not, you know, that the answers to those are not at this point in time. And, you know, although the building did have a fire in it, it's not substantially damaged. And,
Yeah,
and these guys have agreed to renovate it and make it usable. So, but there's been no decision made to take that building on at this point in time. There hasn't been any of that. This is concept discussion. It's exactly what it is. It's concept. So, all right, no, I'm gonna take, yeah, right here.
Thank you. I'm Ann Davis. I'm Chair of the Dunstable Historical Commission. And as Chair of the Historical Commission, I participated in the town master plan sessions and public input meetings. Residents appreciate Dunstable, mostly for its rural character. They move here because of it and have consistently emphasized the importance of preserving the East Main Street Route 113 corridor, what is known as the gateway into Dunstable. This has come up at all relevant master plan meetings and input sessions. We have serious concerns that the 156 dwelling units and 356 parking spaces will be highly visible from 113 East Main Street. How could the lighting and the scale of the almost 400-foot long apartment structures, football fields are 300 feet long, not be visible from Main Street? These will not be tucked away. The associated lighting and density will certainly have an adverse effect along what is a nationally recognized historic corridor. The East Main Street National Register District is adjacent to this development. If built in this fashion, the development's proximity and visibility from East Main Street will likely, I think, trigger a Section 103 review from the Mass Historical Commission. I will have to check on that, but I just want to read the summary from the National Register nomination. The eastern end of Dunstable's principal thoroughfare retains strong associations with the past by virtue of its well-maintained historic architectural resources. Also, the survival of open space, agricultural resources, and the lack of modern residential subdivisions such as have consumed large parcels of land in nearby towns contribute to the historical appearance. Economic and social forces that drove colonial period development of the area continue to shape the appearance of East Main Street today. Wood frame residential buildings located in an agricultural neighborhood have characterized the area for over 200 years and continue to do so today. There you have it. That's you know, that's pretty strong stuff. And I think we all drive down Main Street, and sometimes I think we take it for granted. But I don't. I just had to read that.
Thank you.
Can I just ask one more question? So you're saying, my understanding was that 55 plus meant 55 plus. And so what's going to happen, let's say, if the 55 plus person dies and they're leaving kids and a younger adult, are they going to be removed from that property because they're no longer 55 plus?
So that's a situation that has to be handled by the condominium association. And that's one of the reasons why you don't, for a project like this, you don't promote these kind of units to folks who are under 55, because it's only allowed to be subject to the HOPA law if you have at least 80% of the condominium units occupied by at least 155. But if you were at the 80% threshold, and the situation you described were to bring the project below that, that's something that would have to be handled by the condominium association.
So there's a project in Methuen, the Regency, which is beautiful units, that they had that exact scenario happen during COVID days, whatever. And they gave that person who was left behind a year to relocate. It was the association to Jesse's, but I know this, I'm a realtor, I understood what happened.
Yeah.
It was the right process. It was, that person had to go because you're not 55 plus.
I was just curious because it could end up being 30% 55 plus, and then,
Right. It would be pretty morbid to think that many people would.
People
pass away,
will.
unfortunately.
It happens.
Sir, up against that back wall there.
Can someone explain to this group today, what would be, this is a friendly 40B proposal. And I commend the developers for doing this process in the town. But what's the opposite of doing friendly 40B? What would happen?
So the unfriendly 40B is, to be perfectly candid with all of you, most of my projects are unfriendly 40Bs. In that situation, what happens is the developer comes in, they go to an outside, what's called subsidizing agency, and they get a finding of site eligibility. They come into the town and they say, we've got a finding of site eligibility from the state. This is what we're building, take it or leave it. If you leave it, we get it anyway. That's the general 40B process in the unfriendly context. But this process is proposing what these developers, Mr. McGovern and Mr. Kelly are proposing, is for the town and the folks who have been so generous with your time and the feedback tonight to come down here during the holidays. You all have a seat at the table and feedback in the project, how it gets designed, and how it works best for the town. That's the contrast of the two.
Dan, go ahead.
So thank you for that. So I think, I've been a resident for 27 years, raised 4 kids in the town with my wife. We're still living in a 230-year-old farmhouse, intend to live here for as long as we can. And I do commend the developers, Matt and Jim, for proposing the friendly 40 process. And I think we as a community have to really keep that in the back of our minds, that they are inviting us to go through this with them. I like the design of this is impeccable. I think it would really fit in with the community because of the sidelines are gonna be kind of off the center. The one thing, living in this town for 27 years, the one thing that amazes me with all the planning and all the brain power in this community is we forget to tie things together in this community with how people move around in this community. When the library was built 25 plus years ago, it's not tied into the center of town. You can't walk to it. When the McGovern project of the road was put in, there was no sidewalk put in. But when the state just redid the center of town, there's now a sidewalk there.
Not all the way.
This community is a big, this is a good project that could really help tie the town with some foot traffic as well. It's something that might or could be considered. But I do think and commend the developers for bringing this town through the friendly 40B process. Thank you.
So you think that 3 buildings that are football field length fits into the community?
If you
doesn't
had
fit next to your
an unfriendly 40B process, you would not be getting a project like this. You wouldn't.
I understand the friendly thing and appreciate
You wouldn't.
what they're bringing to the table. But it's as friendly as holding a bat in your hand and saying, yeah, you gotta do this
Either way.
friendly, or I hate doing this bat later on. It's not completely friendly. Those buildings, I think if you had this development, and you took away those 3 buildings, or made them into more of these other units, I think that's their concern, I think everybody would be happy, and we would smooth. But it's those 3 barracks, that,
The cruise ships.
it'd be a great United courtyard, but it's not, fitting with the dust.
At the end of the day, you don't mind me, at the end of the day, I was on the finance committee for 9 years.
I remember.
This town has a serious revenue problem. And I said this 20 years ago. The finances of this town are going off a cliff, and we're here right now, okay? We have no commercial base in this community. This project can really set things financially on a different path for the community if we allow this friendly point process to continue this discussion so that we can all win this thing together. That's what I believe.
I have 2 questions. So if they didn't go through the 40B process, and these were just condos, the process would be very different. We all have a lot more say. Is that right?
No.
It'd be the opposite.
Yeah,
This is the process in which
you get more
the
say.
town,
Well, is it
Boards have more
because of
say.
the 40B status that we have more say?
No.
Because we chose to live down.
You don't have any say.
It's because we.
Well, when I say have more say, I mean cooperation and working with them. But if,
It's because we're proceeding with the friendly 40B format.
but
So that, yeah.
But if this wasn't proposed to be affordable in any way, it would just be another, residential community discussion we have, like, do we want subdivision going in there? Do we want, condos? Do we want townhouses? It would be,
Be a planning board.
So, yeah, in that case, we'd be going to the planning board, we'd have, single family, large houses, 4 or 5 bedrooms, with two gentlemen's point in the back, children coming into those houses, each one potentially on well water, not contributing to the town water.
We're going 14
all
now.
this consideration. I'm just trying to understand the 40B requirement makes the discussion and the process very different, right?
the fact that it's a lip makes this discussion happen.
Okay.
They're both 40B projects, but this is a local initiative program project, the Friendly, which is the developers are engaging the town by having this meeting. They'll be having reviews by some of the other boards. And ultimately, they're asking for the select board to be essentially co-signers on their application to the state.
It means more to the
So-
state when the select board sign off on it and show their communal support for XYZ project.
If they were just doing a conventional 40B, they don't have to show up here at all. They go directly through the state process.
Or not doing a 40B.
Or they could not do a 40B. If it were not a 40B, then they would be, as they were saying, it would be a conventional subdivision going to the planning board.
Right, we all vote on it.
Well, no one
planning
votes on that. The planning board votes on that.
You would have to have.
It's private property, so therefore it's their choice on how to go.
Open space subdivision.
Dunstable building block, 2 acre minimums, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that's just us. And then someone to whomever, I understand all that, I'm just trying to understand.
Okay, any other questions? Hang on a second. Carol, I'm gonna go back up front here. Carol?
When Jim made his presentation in March, he said this was those buildings would be rental and the outside rim would be sales.
I did not say they would be, I said they could be if the town wanted it.
Okay,
When we
so
first discussed with the town, Leah especially wanted for sale, not for rent. It's still not off the table. If the town wants to engage in a rental, I believe Jesse can still arrange that. So the whole path here is for sale. If the town decides they want to spin it and put some rental in there to offset their quantity, I believe they can do that.
Well, that's what I'm asking, because at that point, you gave us all kinds of statistics about, all 126 of those units could be rentals, and then we could meet our 10% of affordable housing by counting all.
Talk to your board. That's a decision that they would.
That's something I think, I'm speaking for the select board, so I don't want to speak too strongly, but I think that's something we are interested in learning more about, because if we had this size of a project and it was done with more affordable units and it ended our need to meet the 10% affordable housing requirement the state has in play, that would be a great win for the town.
Well, I'm certainly here.
I know you as an affordable housing person would agree with that, as I sit on that board with you.
But I just need that clarified, because that's two different things. Now you're saying that they're condos for sale, and he was saying they're for rent, so we need to figure out.
Again, we're in a conceptual phase here, I think that's been pretty
Well, that's why
clear.
maybe we need to clarify.
Hang on, down in the back,
Marcia?
Marcia?
So the buildings are 3 stories high, is that correct?
The larger one.
The larger ones, so I don't think we have fire equipment to handle fire on a 3rd floor building, do we?
We have mutual aid agreements for what we call auto aid, and Pepperell and Tingsboro come in with an aerial ladder to support us. Dunstable hasn't had an aerial ladder since the late 50s. Yeah.
They'd also meet the fire suppression code that's already in play, so they'd be sprinkled.
Perfect. And then the DPW building, is that actually a gift? Or is it the town is going to have to purchase that from the developer?
None of that has been decided at this point in time.
Because I know at the last meeting it was mentioned that it was gifted to the town, but in the paperwork it said the town would have to buy it between $1 and $4 million.
We have not entered into any discussions regarding that negotiation.
But the information does say gift.
It does?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
It does say
I think what you may be referring to, ma'am, is the previous materials was giving a projection of what it would cost the town if you had to go out and buy it.
Hang on a second, I want to go in the back. Ma'am in the back there.
Wait, how does this, or does it affect the 40B housing part of it? The 40B housing that's gonna go in or proposed behind the post office, does it affect it at all? Is it in addition to, is it,
It's not, it has not, they're separate projects.
they're separate?
Yeah.
The one behind the post office is town-owned land, the Mud District, and that's a project that the town initiated, and now we have an agreement and a developer that's working. So this is a different situation in that this is private.
But presumably, I know that it's all, there's federal money, there's, so the 40B stuff, I'm not that familiar with. However, is there a minimum we have to do? And does this put us over the minimum? Like, how did, I thought that behind the post office, it was enough 40B to give us what we needed.
It's not enough.
Yeah, you need 10% of your housing units, so let's say we have 1,250 here in town, you need 125 affordable housing units.
Okay.
So that's 44.
Forty-four.
Yep,
Got it.
so we're still short.
This will get us that.
Well, in there,
It could, yeah,
yeah,
depends on how it's all negotiated.
Okay, and the other comment I also want to make is, these people, this isn't their first time done this. So there's got to be information out there on, the management company, how they work with the towns, how well it worked out for the other towns. All our concerns, they can't be unique. I don't know if this is right for the town or not, but per what Dan was saying, you need revenue, this is a large piece of property, and there don't seem to be that many options that have been brought to the table. This is one that isn't, isn't commercial, companies coming in. It's a lot, and to Alan Jamie's point, we have to be very careful, but I can see both sides, there's a lot of fear here. I don't want to see the footprint of the town change either, but the reality is we have to do something to have revenue. And I think that's what we're all trying to do right now.
No, hang on, in the back, yeah, right there. Ma'am?
Me?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, conceptually, I think it makes a lot of sense for the town. Go ahead. One question I have though is after the completion, how long does Brown intend to stay connected? So usually, my understanding is that when an HOA is completed and a board is elected, that government body takes over. the maintenance, the voting on the maintenance, on the, any new, additions they want to make to the community, just overall look and feel, interactions with the town, with the butters, all of those kinds of things. So you're now dealing with a different entity, right, than the ones that initially you can partner with and cooperatively enter and construct this. How long does Gravel intend to stay involved? Is that what will happen? Will eventually they become, removed entirely without any kind of oversight?
There would be, I mean, the developers at some point, as soon as the HOA takes custody of the operation of the site, the developers have concluded their business, and it's then the responsibility of the homeowners association, which has a president, treasurer, clerk, and all the rest of the stuff, to manage that property and to abide by the rules of the HOA and enforce those rules. So the developers do not stay involved with these projects. They exit them at some point in time.
And there are management companies, so if anyone's familiar with Westford, there's like Hildreth Heights and Hildreth Hills. Those are the condos over there, and they're very nice. And they have an HOA fee, but then Evergreen Management runs the management of those facilities for like the grass cutting, the snow plowing, the salt, trash.
The HOA hires companies.
Yeah, the HOA will hire out the management of the facility.
Sir.
So hypothetically speaking, if the DPW relocated 41 Lowell, would the town now sell the current property over there, which is commercially zoned? Because that would bring a real heavy check to the town, as long as we still did who wrote the most zeros.
I think in concept, that's kind of the path forward, is that property that houses the DPW currently would get sold.
Right, be a big chunk of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why the town, rezoned it, a couple of years ago. Whether the, new highway, garage, wherever it was, we knew we needed a new one. And it made sense to rezone that. As you may know, the, Greenbelt property is already zoned business. And so you get those two chunked together. But as you say, sell it and.
It's probably the first commercial property that's not on Logic Street.
It's actually so improper.
I hope so.
Yes.
So if you, with that,
Yes.
would you move the salt shed to Lowell?
Yeah.
Yes, it would go where the DPW goes, right? So, okay, ma'am, sorry, go ahead, right here. No, yep.
Okay, a couple of questions. What is the going price on these units? Will they be like the current market price at the time?
It'll be, current market price. The affordable units are restricted, based on guidelines.
Okay, my other question is, this project, you only have 5% of the project is affordable?
25.
Oh, 25. Okay. Okay.
Any other questions? Ann?
Oh, yes, I just, when I first saw the plans, and I'm glad this is still in sort of a preliminary phase at this point. I kind of researched what other over 55 communities look like and how they dealt with the larger, longer buildings. Because for me, that seems to be the most sort of out of place. And so I just made copies of, and which I'll share with the applicants, of senior over 55 housing in the area that has multiple units in the buildings. And it seems right-sized for the area, for Pepperell, Groton, Dunstable. And I thought those could be considered. So I printed them and I thought I'd pass them out.
No, I'm sorry, way in the back. Yep.
Yeah, so to echo what other people said, it's really the fun reason to take filters that are, I think, the reason most people are here. Is there any thought of potentially less units in those, maybe only 2 stories? Because like for me, those 3 buildings, like I had a 2-year permit process to find a new house. Like I probably have to be out. And I'm just wondering if there's any thought to that, making somewhat smaller, maybe 2 stories, maybe a little bit less students. It seems big.
I just say we're taking all the feedback. A lot of helpful feedback, a lot of positions being presented, and we'll chat after each plot, of course.
Sir, right here.
John, there's a lot of questions on the building, the 3 buildings, but I don't think there's enough detail for us, for me, to come to an assessment on that. Meaning, I know that property line drops down from Wall Street, right? So you're gonna, a little bit further. What do you keep? But it looks better. So what I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, we really don't know how much of a, for lack of a better term, it is visible from the street. Like, what is the height of the building? What's the trees that you're gonna, like, there's a lot of talk, I mean, there's a lot of, but we don't have enough detail. When it's all done, we may say, what were we thinking? Can't even see it.
But that's certainly an item that we can explore visually and present in future meetings. What entrance to the road right now, if you're there, what do you see now, what do you see in the future, how hot has that burned? How those trees will mature, what's that building look like? I think that's a reasonable thing to explore.
When we were looking at putting in a telephone tower, they actually had to fly balloon down the center. They flew balloons up on top of the hill to see the height of the tower, if it was gonna be visible throughout the town. I think you just took a crane and put it up there and.
High poles or something.
Yeah, you can see,
High poles.
you can see that from the road.
It's also.
All right, a couple more, you just.
Well, the other thing in the plan that shows that, there's gonna be more openings than what's there now. There's already vacated homes on Willow Street, preparing for this project. And if you look at the entrances or the green area, right now, there's more woods than there's going to be. There's the old Dumont garage that's gonna be knocked down. There's gonna be a lot more visual aspects from Main Street and Lowell Street when this project occurs as compared to what you're looking through now. It's gonna get opened right up. I have no doubt about it.
Okay, any other questions? Ma'am?
It's not really a question, just a comment. I live on Lowell Street, across the street, and on the other side of the power lines. And I'm just, one suggestion, I think this is great all around. The apartment buildings seem really close to the power lines. And maybe the possibility of shortening them, and maybe a fifth or a quarter, and creating some kind of a barrier there, because I hate looking at the power lines, and I live 2 houses over, and finally the trees have grown up. But they're really imposing, and I think there's also a debate whether there's health concerns about living right up against the power line. That's my only comment, but I think overall it's a pretty big situation.
Okay, not seeing anyone else.
John Crandall, in the back.
John, I'm sorry.
John Crandall, I live here in town, grew up in town, used to play on the property actually, as a kid. But I think this would be great for the town, the real one for 39 years, I think. Every time I sell them around, has 40 Bs in it. Some of them are atrocious, some of them are forced upon the town. They have the option to have a developer work with the town, is really great. I think there's a lot of upside, the fact that it's 55 plus is a huge benefit as well, because it will minimize the amount of children, if there are some, it'll definitely minimize it, because 55 and older, one person in the unit has to be 55. I think it's a great upside. I think it's long overdue. The town has been working to get towards a 10% affordable housing stock for years, and it's not happening. I mean, we approved the Jack the Guardian project in the 90s, and it never got built. And even the economy tanked and things changed. So I think they have a project in this town that my mother would still be in town if they had a project. She could live on one level. Unfortunately, I think it's a great thing.
Okay. Colleagues on the board, Leah, Karen?
I don't have any other questions. I guess this is one, and because I can't remember, maybe the developers know this, or maybe our TA or road commissioner knows this. Is the water, do we have to extend our water line to you guys up Wall Street?
The water line will need to be extended.
The water line will need to be extended, okay, all right.
Somebody's done.
Somebody's paying
Yeah,
for it.
okay.
We would have to do
put us, yeah.
No.
Rephrase your question, Karen.
Who is going to extend the water line?
That would be time with Mass Works, I think.
Okay. Yeah, and I too was sort of curious about the timeline to completion. And based on, this is for the whole crowd to know, and Carol knows this from affordable housing, and so does John, like, it's taking our NCO project, the Mud District project there, it's taken them quite a few hoops to jump through to get their process approved and permitted. So to somebody's point, this may take 2 years to be shovel ready. I would plan for even a little bit longer than that. The state is moving very slowly on approval processes.
Just that, they've changed their name again, they dropped off the executive office.
Okay.
So they're now just housing and livable communities.
Yeah,
And they hired 20 new people last week.
yeah. It's, so again,
Getting there.
and I'm appreciative of everyone's willingness to come tonight and share questions. I think this group's going to continue to be equal partners and try to hear from folks. But this is a very long-term picture of trying to get as much feedback and collaboration as we can on it. And as the three of us often with our TAs and our groups look at our budgets, we've jumped off the cliff basically come this spring in terms of financial abilities for the town. So that too is in the back of my head personally in terms of what will be best for the town 10 years from now financially in order to keep the town as special and unique as it is. So.
Well, to that point, the numbers that, the potential revenue that could be coming in, this is assumed on full build out of this project, which you're saying could be up to 10 years. And it may not start for 2 years, so that's assuming you ever get to full build out, because you say you're gonna perhaps phase it in response to what the market's doing. So 1.1 million is not a guarantee by any means.
No, it'll be more than that by the time we get to the end.
Well, if you actually build it out.
Yeah.
But, the first couple, 5, 6 years, maybe a third of what you're saying here.
I have a question. Jason, including the new water that we just signed, right? How much was that, debt exclusion override?
3.4 million.
So that was 3.4 million. We signed it up in November.
Yeah,
Right, so that's
just
an
last month.
That's for the PFAS
I understand.
issue that,
But
just so everybody
My
knows
next
what
question
you're
is,
talking.
how does your deficit look for the next 3 years in the town?
Complete.
Right now, it's projected deficit for the next 3 years is about $2.1 million.
So 5 million with what we've just voted in on the water plus your deficit, right? That's new money that you need to.
Out of the tax base,
That's right.
but the water that we just voted through is excluded.
Right.
Right, that's not a.
2.2 million that he's referring to is operating
How many
money.
layoffs are we potentially looking at for the town for next year if you don't get something passed, including yours?
Quite a
Very significant.
If we don't get an override next year, given the deficit we're looking at right now, worst case scenario, this is essentially saying that the schools will get funded at what they're asking for now. If we don't get an override,
Which is a significant increase from
explosion, it's bad, it's really bad. I mean, it's hard to say, but, we
wouldn't tie a number to it because.
we have to close the library, we have to reduce public safety, fire and police.
Again.
You couldn't afford me for sure. Seniors would have no services. Every department in town would be affected in some ways.
Thank you.
It would be bad.
What was your point of asking that question?
Because we have to drive revenue somehow.
That's all.
Of course, I wish it was quicker. Like everything, I'm impatient, Mike.
Yeah. I mean, we need I don't want to go on for too long about this, but we need a solution for the next period of time, well before we're going to see any revenues from this project.
Or even the other way.
Or even the other one, for sure. So there's a short, midterm problem financially here, aside from this project that we need to figure out in other ways. And then
So there's a
for the out years, depending on what happens, potentially this could
That's good help.
Yeah.
And we need him to be able to help sort all this out.
Okay, just, yeah, absolutely.
I own a little house on Pleasant Street here in Dunstable. And I rent it, and the water bill's got to $5,000 a year for a couple, and I don't think they drink more than 3 glasses of water a day. Something's gotta give.
We are very, very aware of that.
I'm sure you are.
And you're not the only, we're very aware of it. And, this project takes that debt and amortizes it. It'll get even sufficiently more better when we tie into the town of Pepperell and start selling them water, which is also a couple of years out. So, there is hope here. This isn't, this inequity in this water rate thing is not something that this board and the water board hasn't thought of. And we do have plans in place. The only trouble is this is gonna take the sting out of it this year. But on a go-forward basis, when we make that connection to Pepperell and start selling them water, and then we add in this 156 units, of which will all be ratepayers adding to that system, those water bills will recalculate down to something that's a lot more sane. Because they're not sane right now, they're insane.
We're like a top 5 highest water rate in the state. Crazy.
We have, and just so you know, the issue with the water, a couple of questions have come up as a side discussion. But we have tried now 4 different times to rent space on the top of that water tower. And that round railing around, there's not a railing, that's an antenna bracket that I had put in there so they could put antennas on the thing. And we've got no takers for it, because that question's come up a couple times by other people. So this board, Leah, myself, and Karen are very aware of this. It is a significant impact to you people that are paying those water rates in addition to your property taxes. So, okay, with that being said, it's just a little bit after 8. I'm gonna close this. I wanna thank everybody for coming out. Just so you know that on a go-forward basis, this information is gonna be available on the town's website, and there may be a couple of other venues that you can get answers to your questions. So thanks everyone for coming, I appreciate it. Enjoy the holiday.
Motion to adjourn?
2 weeks, a week.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn to a bar.
Yes.